Yo, what's going on guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're back with another new build. I like to call this guy the Frost Abomination. Let's just start by taking a look at this fashion. Absolutely awesome. I love the way this build all flows together, from the fashion to the weapons. It's a really smart looking build, I think. Look at the helmet. I mean, it's such a goofy helmet, but it just seems to work on this build. Really like it. But anyway guys, we're level 75 build this time, 45 bigger. Pretty much quality build, 35 strength, 25 dex, but then we've got 14 intelligence and 15 arcane just because we need those for the weapons. We've got a few main weapons on the build to choose from. We've got the Putrescence Cleaver, we've got the Zamor Curve Sword, the Death's Poker, and the Cold Curved Great Club. Now these all obviously do frost build up on the weapons, and on the Curved Club we've got Chilling Mist. And then obviously you know about the Ashes of War on the other weapons. The Zamor Curve Sword is a really good one, if I can even get it out. This is for when things get a bit spicy and I need to get people off me. It turns people into shampoo, I heard the other day, which is actually a really good way to phrase it. It really does turn people into shampoo. But yeah, in our second weapon slot on the right hand we'll always have the good old needle. Really good just to have that fast option to switch to. Finish people off when they're at low health. Now in our offhand, we've got two little axes to choose from. We've got the Jawbone and we've got the Ice Wind Hatchet. Now I did prefer to start using the Jawbone over the Hatchet, but they're both there to use and we do use them both in the invasions, but I just think the Jawbone visually suits the build so well. And on that one, I've got the Ash of War. Divine Beast Frost Stomp. There you go. I forgot what it was called for a minute then. But that's the Ash of War anyway. It's a really nice build, you know, switching between the weapons. Works really well. Yeah. Back to the invasions. The Frost Abomination, guys. I've been having an absolute blast invading with this build. It's worked so well. I'll tell you a little something about this build. It started life at 160 and initially it was all based around the Putrescence Cleaver. I wanted to make a build out of that bad boy. I had a previous build on my Xbox that used the Putrescence Cleaver at high levels, and the build looked a lot different. It was a high arcane build. It was a split strength and arcane, and I was using the Putrescence Cleaver. I was using a Blood Fiend's arm which was infused with blood, and I was using one of the blood spears, and I had a few incantations on the build as well. You can kind of see where I was going with it. I wanted to make this kind of blood fiend beast build with some incantations to boot, and I wanted to make it at high level. Now, to say it was a failure would be an understatement. High level invasions are just absolutely awful. It's just an absolute nightmare up there, guys. I used to think whenever I saw anyone invading at high levels and they had that spiky thorn shield and they had big heavy armour and it was being ultra sweaty, I thought it just turned my stomach every time, you know. I thought I'd never do that. I'll never go up to high levels and just be ultra sweaty. But I think, honestly, the more I've tried it lately, the more I think it's the only way you can survive, guys. I've tried to go up there and be cute and make some interesting quirky builds, and it's just not worked. I think I might have one more go at it, making a high level build and try and make something that is just robust, resistant to bleed, because everyone's using bleed, and just see how it goes. And then if that one doesn't work out, if I really try and make it survivable up at high levels, I might just stick to these low level invasions because it's so much more fun. So yeah, so I took the Putrescence Cleaver, guys, from that build, and that was the main weapon that I wanted to stick with. I wanted to make a build out of the Putrescence Cleaver that would actually work. So I brought it down to level 75, I believe we're invading at now. This level has been absolutely awesome. Anywhere between, you know, level 40 and level 90 in Seamless seems to be so nice for invasions, but I think the sweet spot lies between 60 and 90. So I brought this build down to 75, made the Putrescence Cleaver the focal point, and then started building around that. Now, I looked at the Putrescence Cleaver, and I thought, who actually realises this weapon does frost build up? It's kind of like a forgotten frost weapon. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like everyone knows about the cleaver, but I don't think anyone really thinks of it as being a frost build-up weapon. So I decided to play into the theme of frost on the build. So I was like, what other weapons can I add to it? You'll see in the invasions as they're going along in the video, sometimes I do like to do weapon swaps on this build. And you'll see that if you look at the menus when I'm doing the weapon swaps, sometimes there's less weapons on there to choose from, and then other times we've got the max weapons to choose from. That's because the build developed over time, and over a good few invasions I kept adding more and more weapons to it that I thought really suited it, and the end result is just really nice. It flows and works together so well. So we took the putrescence cleaver and we started building out from there. The first thing I added was an offhand axe, which was the ice rind hatchet, the first one, the small little ice rind hatch with the frost stomp ash of war. That was always going to be in the offhand. It just worked really well, especially with the cleaver. It's like two big axes, one big and one small. And then I decided to add some more weapons on top of that. The next one being the frozen needle, just because it's super lightweight. It's an obvious frost weapon, and it's just good to have that quick option in my second weapon slot. When people are low health, you know, it's hard to chase them down with a big old hammer or a big old axe, whichever it actually is, like the putrescence cleaver. Obviously having a small axe in the offhand isn't great for chase downs either, so I do like to have a quick weapon in my second weapon slot, so the needle went on there. Building out from there even further, I decided to add the Death's Poker. Now, in the same regard as the putrescence cleaver, I think the Death's Poker is another kind of forgotten frost weapon. I think everyone thinks of the Death's Poker as just being the magic based weapon that has the big explosions. You do need a little bit of int for it, that's why I've got the intelligence on the build, sorry. But it's another weapon that people forget is kind of like a frost weapon in the same vein as the putrescence cleaver. And the stats are very low requirements. We just added a bit of intelligence, and then we already had the other requirements for the build. So that was a nice addition on top of the weapons we already had. Going from there, I decided that I needed a big kind of impact weapon for when things get a little bit spicy. There's a more curved sword, there's an obvious choice for that. Not the best moveset, so I tend not to use it in general, you know, fighting situations. I just have that on the build for the Ash of War. If things are getting a little bit crazy, if I've got anyone just spamming moonveils or wizards, or anyone's being really aggressive, you'll see me use it a few times throughout the video. I do a quick weapon swap to it, get the Ash of War out, and it often levels the playing field. It gets me a kill, or at least turns the tables and allows me to, you know, get the upper hand in a situation where I've not got the upper hand. And then finally, the last weapon that I decided to put on the build was the big curved great club, and the obvious choice for that was the frozen mist, sorry, the chilling mist it's called, isn't it? It's a chilling mist. I wanted that on a big old weapon. I initially had that on the jawbone in the offhand, the little axe. That's another weapon I actually decided to add. I had the ice rind hatchet, but then someone did suggest to me that the jawbone would look really good on this build from a visual standpoint. So I also added the jawbone just as an alternative to the ice rind hatchet, and I actually fell in love with this little axe. I think it suits this build so much. It was a really good addition to it. But initially I had freezing or chilling mist on that weapon. You will see me use that in a few invasions as well. But it just weren't working too well. It was quite short range. It weren't really hitting anyone in the actual Ash of War when it came out. So I thought I needed a longer weapon to put chilling mist on. So I brought the curved great club in for that. And then I added the Divine Beast Frost Stomp to the jawbone. So, you know, everything kind of worked out well. And what I do like about the weapons on this build is that they all kind of feel like they belong. The kind of lore of this build that I like to think of is that this is kind of some kind of man-beast that has been lurking up in the cold mountains for centuries, you know, living in the cold, surviving and eating and feeding off the animals and scraps he can find up there. You can see he's kind of got all the remains of all these animals that he's killed and had to battle in the past. He's got them all attached to his armour that he's wearing. It looks like a bit of an abomination with the helmet. You know, it's a bit thrown together in terms of actual lore, but I just imagine him as this kind of like ice abominable snowman creature type thing, and all his weapons have got that feel of all kind of being found and put together and made up in the mountains. You know, he's using big clubs, he's using like sticks with the Death's Poker. Even the Putrescence Cleaver just looks like some big skeletal bone from some colossal animal that he's had to fight up in the mountains. So I think from a visual, all the weapons just flow really well with this build. It's a really good one, guys. It's a lot of fun to use. I'm really liking the weapon swapping at the minute on some of these builds that I've been making. The last video I did, it was the poisonous build, and that had some good features with some weapon swaps. And this one also has some nice weapon swapping on it as well. The weapon in our left hand, one of the hatchets, whichever one we happen to be using, that will never change. The frozen needle in our second weapon slot, that will never change also. But our main weapon has some really nice options for weapon swaps between the 4 main weapons that we're using. The Ashes of War are really good, and it's good to, you know, switch it up in the heat of combat to catch our enemies off guard, especially having that some more curved sword there. Gets me out of a pinch on many occasions. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. This build has been a lot of fun to use. This is actually the last invasion of the video. It's quite a long one, this one. This was actually the very first invasion that I ever did on this build, so if it looks like I'm a little bit all over the place with it in this one, it's because I kind of was, you know. This was my first ever time trying these weapons in a combination. At this point I didn't have all the other weapons on the build to switch to. As I said, those all kind of came later as the build developed and I got more used to it. But this invasion's an interesting to watch back because you can kind of see me getting a feel for the Putrescence Cleaver in particular, getting a feel for the range, getting a feel for the Ash of War. One big drawback with this weapon is that it's very short. Like, it's obviously very short, and that is a definite drawback for it. It's got good damage, the Ash of War is really funky, but yeah, it's got a short range on it. But the one saving grace is that it's got a running heavy attack, which is very good. It's got this kind of wide sweeping, I just used it then in the video, it's a wide sweeping heavy attack. I just did it again then. You can see how that gives it a bit more range when you're chasing people. But yeah, this is an interesting invasion. You can see me kind of feeling the build out, and then we just take it from there. But I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. It's been a blast to make this one again. Really fun build. Thanks for watching. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you all on the next one.